In a minute, we'll welcome our very special guest, Frank Seeley. Frank started his business back in the sort of 70s or 80s, I think I read somewhere, out of a shed, and basically brought a whole new way of air conditioning to the world. So without further ado, let's hear that story. Frank Seeley. That first sort of trying to convince people almost that you had a new way of building air conditioners. How hard was that?
It was pretty tough. But you see, I think I quoted it earlier today, necessity is the mother of invention. And I was selling portable evaporative coolers and selling them very well, I might add. At least I thought so. I had the rug pulled from under me by the guy that owned the company. And his beef was that he was paying me too much money. The fact that I'd built his company up over 3.5 years to what it was didn't seem to count for anything. So when that happened, I went home to my wife and I said, I think we'll make our own coolers. Having the rug pulled from under you, it's a dreadful experience, particularly at age 30.
Yeah.
But the fact is, nothing of any value comes unless you have some trauma first. That's absolutely essential. And I've had trauma in spades. My father died when I was 9. My mother had to go out to work. She hadn't worked all her married life, and she had to go out and start school teaching to keep a family of 8 in bread and butter. We've got a bit more than bread and butter sometimes, but it's I'll leave it at that. I learnt as a young boy that if I was going to get money, my mother couldn't give it to me because she didn't have it. We'd have a rage at school for yo-yos. You remember these fads used to come and go, and I'd say, Mum, can I have 2 bob for a yo-yo? And she'd say, I'd love to give you 2 bob, but I don't have 2 bob. So if you want it, you're going to have to go and weed somebody's garden or wash their windows. So at 12 years old, I was starting out in the business world. I look back on that as one of the best things that could have happened to me, because I had to learn to make my own way. So when the rug was pulled, I said, well, we'll make our own coolers. And I had one idea, and that was, I'm entering a market that's going to be very, very competitive, so I've got to do something different. And at that stage, all portable coolers were made of metal, mostly from steel, and no matter what you did to them or how you treated the steel or even the aluminium, they all eventually corroded. So I decided I'd make a plastic one. Great idea, stupid idea, but it actually caught the imagination of the public in Australia. And the first year we sold 1,000, second year we got an order for 4,500. Year 10 we made and sold 150,000. So that's how it went. I took the order for 1,000 coolers from Lawrence and Hanson, they're still around today. I took it down to a tool maker down the street in Gumbowie Avenue, Edwardstown, where we had our little factoryette. And this guy was a tool maker, and I knew he did good tooling. So I got him to quote on the parts that I needed, plastic parts. And I went back a week later and he said, well, here are the prices. And I said, okay, well, I'll place the order. He said, oh, good. I said, there's one thing you've got to know before we start. He said, what's that? I said, I need 180 days credit. He said, what? And I said it again. I said, here's the order. There's no question about that order. It's 1,000 portable coolers, but I need 180 days credit. And he asked me why I wanted it, and I was able to explain that and convince him. He said, nobody has ever asked me for 180 days credit. He said, I need to think about it. Come back in 2 days. I went back 2 days later. He said, I said to you, nobody had ever asked for 180 days credit, but plenty of people have taken it. And because you were so honest, I'm going to give it to you. So there's a good principle at the start.
Yeah.
It's well known, it's hackneyed, but honesty is the best policy. In fact, it's the only way to be in business. Without integrity, you've got nothing. You're like a ship without a rudder and without an anchor. You just go wherever the winds blow. It was about, I think, the 3rd year where we really hit some trouble. Do you want me to go on and tell you about that?
Tell me the trouble.
Okay. It was in September. I was in a restaurant with my wife and family. Went home to bed, 10 o'clock. The phone rang. I was working probably 16 hours a day, and the phone rang. And this voice said, I woke up out of a dead sleep, and this voice said, is your name Seeley? I said, yes. He said, are you the Seeley from Gumbowie Avenue, Edwardstown? I said, yes. He said, well, you better get down here because your factory's burnt to the ground. Now, I went all the way there praying. I'm a praying man, I'm a Christian, a practicing Christian, and I was praying, Lord, let it be the guy next door. I had nothing against the guy next door. I just didn't want it to be my place. And so I got home about 3 o'clock in the morning and rang my eldest brother, who at that stage of my life, my business life, was a great mentor to me. So I got him out of bed and I told him what had happened, and he commiserated for about a minute and a half, I think. And then he said, this is probably the best thing that's happened to you. And I said, well, I can't see how that can be. He said, well, you'll find out. But he said, anyway, I need to get back to bed. You need to go and have some sleep. Just get there tomorrow and start making it happen. And he said, if you're not back in production within 7 days, I'll never speak to you again. Bang. It was the greatest shot of adrenaline I needed, and it was absolutely fabulous. And so at 6:30 the next morning when the troops arrived, and there weren't a lot of troops, there's probably a dozen of them, I was there on a heap of rubble, and I just said, guys, just go home and have a holiday for a week. We'll be back in production in a week's time. I had no idea how we were going to do it. Really, we just said the job's got to be done. Yep. So let's get on and do it.
So how do you deal with negative folk in amongst all of that? I mean, there'll be people that say you can't do it. There'll be people that even criticise the product for whatever reason at different times. How do you
couldn't
deal with
imagine them doing that to our products.
But
if they did, they'd be totally wrong.
How do you deal with it?
How do you deal with it? Well, negativity is something, it's like a cancer, and you've got to get rid of it out of the place. And you've either got to change the people who are negative, or you've got to change the people who are negative. Take your pick, one way or the other. You've got to get rid of them. And but also the flip side of that is enthusiasm with integrity is capable of infecting people also in a positive sense and getting them going. And from day one, I've had big visions. I mean, when I decided I was going to make coolers, my dream was I wanted ultimately to have a factory where there were 4 or 5 guys in white coats with clipboards. Materials were poured into a machine at one end of the factory and came out in their boxes ready to go at the other. Hasn't got anywhere near that, of course. But he who aims at the stars hits higher than he who aims at the treetops. And that's what we've done, and that's why we are where we are in terms of automation today.
So there's still more space to innovate in terms of what you do?
There is never an end to innovation. Innovation is not something that it's not a destination, it's a journey, and you keep on going. And I have said, and some will have heard me say it, I'm a great believer in the future of Australian manufacturing, but you've got to do 2 things. You've got to innovate, and innovate like there's no tomorrow, and you've got to automate, and automate like there's no tomorrow. Now, I've been preaching that simple message probably for the best part of 10 years now, and we're proving it to be right. We can beat the Chinese because they'll copy what we do, but by the time they get it to market, and they're fairly quick getting things to market, by the time they get it there, we are on the next wave. And so as long as you stay on the front wave and they're in the backwater, they're never, ever, ever going to catch you. And we are working on stuff now which is 4 generations out from where we are. And that's why our future is guaranteed. Yeah. You've got to keep on. The day you stop innovating, it's the day you die. You know, they say about bankers that they give you an umbrella when the sun's shining and take it away when it starts to rain, and that's it's been my experience. Once you get into bad bank with bankers, it's almost impossible to get out without changing banks. But this time, I rang them up in mid-January and I said, I'm going to manufacture another 1,000 coolers. No, you're not. You can't. I said, well, hang on. Here's how much we make out of each one. I've got orders for them. If I don't fulfil those orders, then what's the opposition is going to get that business? They said you can't make the coolers. So we had a guy who was a finance intellectual guy on the board, and we went into his office with two of these fellas from Westpac, and they were only young guys. And for an hour and a half, they just went on and on and on about no, you can't. And the guy saying to him, there is every reason, there is no reason, nothing is in doubt, nothing is in any way at risk. Eventually I thought, we got to do something else here, so it's a bit difficult to get him out with this microphone in my pocket. I did it quite surreptitiously. I took my keys out of my pocket. And I said, you know, when this first started, Westpac told me two things. They're very interested straight away. What two things did they tell you? I said, well, one of them was the absolute truth, and the other one was an absolute lie. They said, what? I said, well, the first thing they told me was that bankers don't know anything about business, and that was the absolute truth. They know nothing about business. And then they told me, when they said, what was the lie? The lie was, I said, that they said because of that they would never interfere with my business. And I said, if you are so smart, then as far as I'm concerned, and I stood up and made sure I kicked the chair back. I haven't gone off the air with this, have I?
No,
might have pulled something out. Okay. I kicked the chair over backwards and threw the keys on the desk, and I said, if you're so smart, you can have the business. And I turned around and started to walk towards the door. And the door was about twice as far as from here up to that pillar there. And I started to walk, and I said, no, come back. No, I'm not coming back. Come on, come back. No. And all the way I put my hand on the door handle to open the door, and one of them yelled out, you can go ahead and make the coolers. I turned around and I said, what did you say? You can go ahead and make the coolers. And I said, well, why the heck didn't you say that an hour and a half ago? That actually got us out of bad bank.
Frank Seeley, ladies and gentlemen.